Franz Kafka's The Trial is one of those books that sounds really miserable to read, and it is. But somehow it manages to be both profound and weirdly funny at the same time, which is quite the achievement when you consider that it's about a man being prosecuted for a crime that no one will tell him about, and by a court system that nobody can explain until he's eventually executed for reasons that remain utterly opaque. The novel follows Joseph K., a respectable bank officer who wakes up one morning to find that he's been arrested. But the problem is that he's not told what he's done to be arrested. He's just taken to jail. And he continues his life, except now there is this legal proceeding hanging over him like a particularly aggressive storm cloud that never quite decides whether or not to rain. And from there, it gets progressively more absurd and nightmarish until you're not entirely sure whether to laugh or cry. What makes The Trial so unsettling and so relevant over a century after Kafka wrote it is that it captures something essential about how systems work. Or rather, how they don't. But they continue to function anyway. The genius of The Trial is in what it doesn't tell you. K is arrested. But for what? Nobody says. He demands to see the charges. But there are no charges. Or rather, there are, but they're never explained to him. And he asks who his judges are. Nobody knows. Or maybe everyone knows, but they won't tell him. It's never quite clear what is going on. And this is the first principle of Kafkaesque systems. Opacity as a feature, not necessarily a bug. The court in The Trial isn't accidentally confusing. It's confusing by design. The more impenetrable it becomes, the more necessary it seems. If you can't understand it, then you can't question it. And if you can't question it, you certainly can't reform it. Which means that the system is going to persist indefinitely. K spends the entire novel trying to understand the system, to find the right person to talk to or to locate this center of authority. But there is no center. The court is both everywhere and nowhere. And even his neighbors are involved. Random people in his office know about the plan. A painter he meets by chance has influence with the judges. A washerwoman in the court offices offers to help, but can't actually do anything. The system has essentially metastasized into everything. And that's the point. When a system becomes sufficiently complex and omnipresent, it becomes impossible to fight because you can never quite find the thing that you're meant to be fighting against. K does what any rational person would do. He tries to defend himself and hires a lawyer. So surely a professional would help. Well, the lawyer, Herhold, does absolutely nothing. He lies in bed, makes vague promises, explains how complex everything is, and fundamentally serves to make K feel simultaneously protected and helpless. Other clients literally wait on their hands and knees in his house, desperate for any scrap of information about their cases. The lawyer has become less a representative and more like a high priest interpreting incomprehensible mysteries. So K tries other routes. He meets a painter who claims to have influence with the judges. The painter offers 3 types of acquittal: definite acquittal, which never happens; ostensible acquittal, which just restarts the process; and indefinite postponement, which is what it sounds like. It just drags the case on forever. But notice that none of these actually resolve anything. The system offers the appearance of options without actual escape. And this is Kafka's second insight. The system creates the illusion of agency while ensuring that you do remain trapped. You can hire lawyers, make appeals, attend hearings, but none of it actually changes your fundamental position. The process is the punishment. The appearance of being able to defend yourself is part of what makes the system so insidious. You feel like you should be able to fix this, which makes it your fault when you can't. It's maddening, because what is so deeply uncomfortable about the trial is that Kay never learns what he's accused of. But by the end, he has internalized his guilt anyway. The system has convinced him that he must have done something wrong, because why else would all of this be happening? And this is perhaps Kafka's most disturbing observation, that systems don't need to prove guilt. They just need to operate long enough that guilt becomes assumed. The mere fact of being processed by the system becomes evidence of wrongdoing. If you're in the machine, you must belong there. There is this brilliant moment where Kay visits a cathedral and a priest tells him a parable. A man spends his entire life waiting at the gate that leads to the law, asking permission to enter. The gatekeeper keeps telling him, "Not yet." When the man is dying, he asks why nobody else has tried to enter through the gate. And the gatekeeper responds, "This gate was made only for you, and I am now going to shut it." The parable is endlessly interpretable, but one reading is this: the system creates obstacles specifically for you, personally, and then blames you for not overcoming them. The gate was always meant to keep you out, but it's structured to make you think entry was possible if only you'd been a little bit smarter, or more persistent, or more worthy. And what makes the trial so nightmarish is that everyone is complicit, but nobody is responsible. The court isn't even run by evil masterminds. It's just run by ordinary people following procedures that even they don't understand. The guards who arrest Kay are confused themselves. The lawyer is useless, but seems genuinely convinced that he's helping. The judges are hidden away in attics and tenements, not marble courtrooms. The whole system is staffed by people who are simultaneously a part of it and victimized by it. And this is the third principle, that everyone serves the system, even when they don't understand it, and especially when it works against their own interests. The washerwoman who helps Kay is also harassed by the court officials. The lawyer has other clients that he neglects. And even Kay's uncle, who tries to help, ends up making everything worse by insisting that Kay take the process seriously. Nobody chose the system. Nobody designed it. It simply emerged and evolved, and now it exists, sustained by everyone's participation, even when that participation is reluctant or coerced. The system doesn't need true believers. It just needs people who keep coming. On the eve of Kay's 31st birthday, two men come to collect him. They lead him to a quarry, and they execute him. And Kay's last words are, "like a dog," referring to the manner of his shameful death. He never learns what he did wrong. He never gets his day in court. The system simply disposes of him. Kafka's final insight is perhaps the bleakest, that the system doesn't need to justify itself. It just needs to continue. K's execution is not about justice or punishment or even deterrence. It's about the system completing its process. He entered the machine, and the machine processed him to its natural conclusion. There's something properly horrifying about this, because it denies us any catharsis or resolution. K does not learn anything meaningful, not throughout the whole book. He doesn't get to redeem himself or even properly resist. The system is just done with him. Now, Kafka understood something fundamental about how systems operate that most people still haven't grasped. He saw that large organizations develop their own logic, their own purpose, that has nothing to do with stated missions or original intentions. The court in the trial doesn't exist to deliver justice, but just to perpetuate the court. Every frustrating interaction that you've had with bureaucracy, waiting on hold for customer service, filling out forms that serve no actual purpose, or being transferred between departments who all claim that it's not their responsibility. That is Kafka's court. It's everywhere. It doesn't mean that the system is necessarily evil, which would be easier to deal with, but that it's indifferent. It operates according to internal logic that has evolved to sustain the system, regardless of whether it actually serves any purpose. And everyone caught in it, both the people being processed and the people processing, are simultaneously victims and enablers. The trial is terrifying because it's not really a fictional court system in early 20th century Prague. It's about any system that becomes sufficiently large and complex, that it develops its own imperatives independent of human intention. Government bureaucracies, corporate hierarchies, academic institutions, even social norms and expectations all have elements of Kafka's court. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Every time you're told to do something that you've already done, or every time you're given contradictory instructions by people working for the same organization, they're simply making you feel like your inability to navigate the system is your fault. The uncomfortable truth is that Kafka doesn't offer us any solutions. The trial is simply a diagnosis. It shows you what's wrong, but doesn't tell you how to fix it, which is rather fitting for a novel about a man who can't fix his situation no matter how hard he tries. But understanding the pattern is valuable. Recognizing that systems evolve towards self-perpetuation and that complexity serves as its own justification is the first step towards building or reforming systems that might actually serve human needs. Or at least not driving yourself mad every time you encounter this kind of bureaucracy. Our systems are larger, more complex, and more opaque than ever before. We're all Joseph K, to some degree, trying to navigate processes that we don't understand, that are subject to rules that nobody can quite explain, and waiting for gatekeepers to grant access to things that were supposedly meant for us all along. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see y'all next time.